So today we're going to talk about Microsoft's hybrid data strategy. So Microsoft recognizes that customers have applications and data on premises in Azure and also in other public clouds. There are many benefits to the hybrid strategy, but there are also challenges like how to consistently deploy, how to secure, and how to effectively manage all of those resources. Microsoft has been building a portfolio of hybrid products to help you manage your hybrid strategy. In this high-level session of Microsoft's hybrid strategy, you're going to learn the basics of Azure Stack and Azure Arc. You'll know when you want to use Azure Stack Hub, HCI, and Edge, and when to use Arc infrastructure and services. This will not be a deep dive into any of these technologies today. This is a high-level session. This is a stepping off point, a beginning, right? Jess and Buck are doing a session tomorrow on Azure Arc-enabled data services. So if something here piques your interest, you should go to that session tomorrow. I am your speaker, Ree Merritt. I work for Microsoft. I'm a program manager there. I manage the Data Platform MVP program. I manage the Azure Data Community, which is a network of 140 user groups in 40 different countries. So if you're not a member of your local user group or even a virtual group, I would ask why, because it certainly shouldn't be about ease of access at this point. I am a local organizer for my Atlanta user group. I have run women in tech groups. I am a volunteer, a mentor. I apparently don't know how to say no when somebody asks me for something. So let's go ahead and let's jump right in. So Azure Arc is a set of technologies that brings Azure security and cloud-native services to hybrid and multi-cloud environments. It enables you to secure and govern infrastructure and apps anywhere. You can build cloud-native apps faster with familiar tools and services to run them on any Kubernetes platform. And finally, you can modernize your data estate with Azure Data and Machine Learning services. So today we're going to touch on two pieces of Microsoft offerings in Azure in hybrid computing, and that is Azure Stack and Azure Arc. And if you don't remember anything else about this talk today, remember that Azure Stack is hardware and Azure Arc is software. And that's how Jess explained this to me before I started building this session. And it kind of let everything else click for me, right? One is software, one is hardware. Okay, now, and if that answered all of the questions that you have today about Azure Arc, you're free to go. No, you're still with me, good, got it. So Azure Stack solutions, remember, Azure Stack is hardware. You can extend Azure services and capabilities to the environment of your choice, from the data center to edge locations and remote offices with Azure Stack. You can build, deploy, and run hybrid and edge computing apps consistently across your IT ecosystem with flexibility for diverse workloads. First up is Azure Stack Edge. This acts as a cloud storage gateway and enables eyes-off data transfers to Azure while retaining local access to those files. You would use Azure Stack Edge for machine learning at the edge and IoT solutions, and network data transfer from the edge to the cloud. The edge is essentially a purpose-built, Microsoft-provided appliance. It is hardware as a service. You can run your application at the edge, which is closer to your data. You can analyze that data for quick, actionable insights by hardware, where you can build and train ML and AI learnings so that your data gets smarter over time. And finally, you can transfer data efficiently and easily between the cloud and the edge. So Azure Stack HCI, or hyper-converged infrastructure, is a pre-built, pre-configured, highly optimized, hyper-converged cluster. You will use Azure Stack HCI for scalable virtualizations and storage, modernizing on-prem architecture and high-performance workloads. You will use it to run Windows VMs, Linux VMs, and containers with full access to hardware and the OS. You can extend your data center to the cloud using Azure Backup, Azure Monitor, and Azure Security Center. The last piece of Azure Stack solution is Azure Stack Hub, and this is a hybrid cloud platform that allows you to deliver services from your data center. So what does that mean, really? It is your own autonomous cloud that you can run completely or partially disconnected from the internet or the public cloud. Services include virtual machines, SQL Server databases, and even other Azure Marketplace items. Use Azure Stack Hub for connected and disconnected scenarios and app modernization that must remain on premises for either technological or regulatory reasons, right? How many of you work in like financial industries or the banking industries, hospitals, pharma? Quite often, the things that you have aren't allowed to be in the cloud, but you want to use cloud technology. This kind of scenario is perfect for you. Online gaming, I think, is one. Currency exchanges, sometimes those aren't allowed to be regulatory. And so I've worked in the medical field, I've worked in pharma, and I've worked in the financial industry. So every single one of these, applies to me, at least in the States. I don't know how it works here. So let's talk a little bit about Azure Arc. Now remember, Azure Arc is software. It's a set of technologies that brings Azure security and cloud-native services to hybrid and multi-cloud environments. It enables you to secure and govern infrastructure and apps anywhere, build cloud-native apps faster with familiar tools, and services to run on Kubernetes. Here we go. So the two main components of Azure Arc, the two major components of Azure Arc enable infrastructure and Azure Arc enabled services. So note the direction of the arrows here. The services flow down from Azure. So when you can't move to Azure, Arc data services bring Azure to you. So Azure Arc enabled, why couldn't you all name that something that's easier to say in public? You're not in marketing. We get things for marketing sometimes, and we're like, we've already used that acronym, so you can't use it anyway. Sorry. So, Azure Arc enabled servers enable you to manage your Windows and Linux physical servers and virtual machines hosted outside of Azure, but on your corporate network or on another cloud provider. This management experience is designed to be consistent with how you manage your native Azure virtual machines. And when a hybrid machine is connected to Azure, it becomes a connected machine and is treated as a resource in Azure. Each connected machine has a resource ID, enabling the machine to be included in a resource group. Right? How many of you are familiar with Azure in general? Like you've used the Azure portal, you're familiar with it. So the concept of a resource group and a resource ID is a familiar one to you, yes? Okay, good. This is that experience in a hybrid scenario. So you can manage your instances of SQL Server from Azure with SQL Server on Azure-enabled servers. This enabling extends Azure services to SQL Server instances hosted outside of Azure. In your data center, on the edge, or in a multi-cloud environment. Now, multi-cloud environment means more than one. So it can mean two, just two separate cloud environments. That's multi-cloud, right? It doesn't have to be 4 or 5 or anything, okay? So to enable Azure services, you register a running SQL Server instance with Azure Arc using the Azure portal and a registration script. The registration will install SQL Arc extension to the connected machine agent, which will in turn deploy a SQL Server Azure Arc resource representing each SQL Server installed on that machine. Okay, so you're installing an agent. Is that the easiest way to describe that? You're installing an agent? Right? Finally, Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes. You can attach and configure Kubernetes clusters running anywhere. You can connect your clusters running on other public cloud providers or clusters running on in your on-premise data center on VMware vSphere, Azure Stack HCI to Azure Arc. Connect Kubernetes running outside of Azure for inventory, grouping, and tagging. You would manage governance and security using Azure Monitor for containers, Microsoft Defender for Kubernetes, and Azure Policy for Kubernetes. And finally, you can use Azure Active Directory for authentication and authorization. And so Buck explained this one to me. That first column has one agent, the second column has 3, and then column 3 has lots. Lots of agents. Like, that's as technical as he got with me. Lots of agents in that last one there. So let's talk just a little bit about Azure Arc enabled data services. And so these are designed to make it possible to run Azure managed data services in the infrastructure of your choice, but using the power of Kubernetes. Azure Arc enabled data services include Azure Arc enabled SQL Server managed instance and Azure Arc enabled Postgres hyperscale, which is currently in public preview. Do we have we don't have a date, or if we do, we don't say a date? Right. So first up, always current. So what does always current mean? Azure Arc enabled data services such as Azure Arc enabled SQL Server managed instance and Azure Arc enabled Postgres hyperscale receive updates on a frequent basis, including servicing patches and new features similar to the experience in Azure. So if any of you are running Azure right now, you know that we manage updates, we manage OS level updates, all of that stuff, and it happens. They've previewed, and now, oh no, it went live in March or February, the notifications and scheduling when your updates and stuff happen. Let's see, so updates from the Microsoft Container Registry are provided to you, and deployment cadences are set by you in accordance with your policies. And because Azure Arc enabled services are a subscription service, you no longer face that end of support issue, right? Because you have it the whole time. Elastic scale. So cloud-like elasticity on premises enables you to scale your databases up or down dynamically in much the same way as they do in Azure, based on the available capacity of your infrastructure. This capability can satisfy burst scenarios that have volatile needs, including scenarios that require ingesting and querying data in real time at any scale with sub-second response times. And by connecting to Azure, you will gain unified management. So imagine being able to see your data services running on premises alongside those running in Azure. The team likes to describe this as viewing everything through a single pane of glass. So all of your on-premise stuff and all of your cloud stuff, you're able to look at it just through one thing. You don't have to disconnect, reconnect, go everywhere else. And this is done through familiar tools like the Azure Portal, Azure Data Studio, and Azure CLI. Now, best of all, you can now have the option to use the modern cloud billing model for better cost efficiency across your Azure environment. I skipped something. So you can view and manage a variety of relational databases across your environment in Azure. But you also get logs and telemetry from Kubernetes APIs to analyze underlying infrastructure capacity and health. In addition to having localized log analytics and performance monitoring, you can leverage Azure Monitor for comprehensive operational insights into your business. We're running low on time, so we're going to talk. Disconnected scenario support. Many of the services, such as self-service provisioning, automated backups and restore, and monitoring can run locally in your infrastructure with or without a direct connection to Azure. And connecting directly to Azure opens up additional options for integration with other Azure services like Azure Monitor and the ability to use the Portal or Azure Resource Manager APIs from anywhere in the world just to manage your Azure Arc-enabled data services. So finally, run on any infrastructure. What does that mean? This means on any OEM hardware or third-party cloud. any virtualization technology, or you can run on bare metal or any major distribution of Kubernetes. And I say that because there's a lot of Kubernetes out there, a lot of flavors. And support on this offers support on existing and future apps. It works on existing virtual machines and bare metal based apps. And it enables Kubernetes and containers for new applications and microservices. How long are we? Where are we? 1 minute? 1 minute. Hold on, let's see. This is marketing. We're gonna skip that. There's also a session tomorrow on SQL Managed Instance with Link. Danny LaPava, he's on our team for Managed Instances. He flew in, he's giving a presentation, and he said this is if you're interested in hybrid scenarios, that his session would be of interest to you as well. And it is not on the page. It's Friday. It's Friday afternoon, whatever that happens to be. There we go. It's at the bottom. Friday, March 11th at 10. Oh, I said afternoon. Don't tell Danny I got that wrong, okay, Davida? Don't tell Danny I got that wrong. Okay. There you go. We are done. I really didn't think this was going to take the 20 minutes.